take a whole cheese, like so, pop it onto the board, and often the coat on the Stilton can be quite hard, and so a good tip is to take a knife and just to make a little score into the crust of the cheese. That'll enable you just to slip the wire into the cheese, and it'll be a lot easier to cut. Always try and get 2 equal halves of cheese, and let the wire do the work as you pull it through the cheese and cut like so. And there we have 2 quite equal halves of blue Stilton. What I would do then is to cut that into a quarter. Traditionally one would take the half, and you don't need to score it this time because as you've already cut into the cheese, it's quite easy to cut, and so we will just pull that through again to make 2 equal quarters of cheese, like so. And then we can take that and then start to cut portions for the customer. We always like to cut again, rather than from the crust to the middle, we like to cut from the middle of the cheese to the crust. This prevents ingress of crust into the cheese, and it's a better way of doing it. So again, we would take that, and that gives us 1/8 of cheese. And in our shop we very often will have several of these because we'll sell them, people are having parties or family and friends around, a good portion to have. From an 1/8 we can cut into a 1/16, like so. So again, we're getting nice uniform pieces of cheese. And then you can cut smaller pieces as you wish. Cutting smaller portions, and these give quite a deep portion size, like so. One little tip again is to try and preserve the nose of the cheese, like so, is just to cut the cheese slightly off centre, and that, rather than cutting to a fine point, just gives a little bit more depth to the nose, and again will protect it when it's being carried home by the customer, so it arrives with them in the best possible condition. And so we can cut like so, and the cheese can be then wrapped individually and priced, and there are a number of different portion sizes there, so the customer can select the product that's the right size for them. An important thing to remember when you've cut the cheese is that the cut faces should be covered as soon as possible and wrapped. Again, in our shop we wrap in 2 mediums. We wrap in cling film or we wrap in wax paper. To cut smaller portions for your customers, another way is to cut it into 2, take a half and cut that into 2 equal halves, again scoring the outside of the coat like so. Another good tip is just to look for the iron grading marks on the coat of the cheese. This is where the grader has graded the cheese and has poked his cheese iron in to look at the cheese and assess how good it is. Try and avoid those and cutting on those, otherwise that will leave an unsightly mark in the face of your cheeses. So again, let's just cut that into 2 rings, like so. So we have 2 very nice rings, and then as you can see we can cut quite small portions from this cheese. So again we can cut that, and because these aren't so deep, these also make very good portions for people when they're having cheese boards and at dinner parties, because the cheese will present much better like this, and your friends can cut a little piece off this without destroying the cheese. If they're cutting down a large depth of cheese like this, very often it makes it look unsightly after a couple of cuts. With these, they are a better way, I think, of presenting on a cheese board. And so we can cut quite small pieces here. The only slight drawback to this is that some of the rings will have crust on the bottom, and others won't. So some people will get a little bit more of a more share of the crust than others. But again, my customers, some people love the crust and others don't want it, so it's all a matter of personal choice. So you can see we can cut up some quite small portions.
Another important thing to remember is that Stilton cheese should always be stored below 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The reason for this is that any temperature above that and the mould will still be working and the cheese will heat up, and there's a danger that the cheese could spoil. So please keep your cheese below 39 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is an important point to remember for all parts of the supply chain: the haulier, the wholesaler, the exporter and the retailer. Stilton should be kept below 4 degrees centigrade or 39 degrees Fahrenheit to prevent it from deteriorating.
And so there you are. Hopefully there's some tips there on how to cut and wrap and present and store your Stilton cheese.
And one of the great benefits of Stilton is that it can be frozen. Simply wrap portions of about ½ pound in weight in aluminium foil and then freeze for up to 3 months. The trick is to defrost slowly in the fridge overnight. This will prevent your Stilton cheese from falling apart.